Hello, everyone in cyberspace. How are y'all doing? I know how I'm doing. Heather and I both have COVID again, but I really wanted to get this video made. So apologies in advance if there are more edits than usual than there are in this, but since I made the aspartame video, because that's come up again, and IARC has come up again, I wanted to talk about just how IARC is, and this has been like over 20 years, scientists have complained about how IARC is basically existing more for ambulance chasing lawyers than it is for actually doing science. So I thought I'd go over this article. This is from David Zaruk. And yes, I'm just guessing is how to pronounce that, but that's going to be the case with all the other names here too. But he wrote, this is back in 2019. So before the aspartame thing, before COVID, before all of that started, that's what this dates back to. And this article is a shorter rewrite of a larger article that's part of a series on how the big U.S. tort law firms are just manipulating scientists in the regulatory process so that they can sue deep pockets. So I'll not only give you a link to this, I'm going to give you a link to the full big, I think it's a 4-part series. And so this one, we've talked about this with all sorts of things. We've talked about glyphosate. We've talked about Wi-Fi. They say that Wi-Fi and 5G causes cancer and things like that. This is why they're doing this, but this one is about benzene, so because that's a good example of how this process works. And he talks about Kurt Strafe, who at the time was the head of the IARC Monograph program, and the Monograph program is where they come up with this like Group 1, Group 2A, Group 2B, and all they classify the different carcinogens. You know how Group 4 means not carcinogenic, and there was only ever one substance, caprolactam, that was not carcinogenic, and then I think in 2018 or something they moved it out, and yep, everything gives you cancer, according to IARC, because lawyers want to be able to sue about everything. So this expose on benzene will show how Kurt Strafe succumbed to pressure from American litigation consultants to hold a further third monograph. The first two weren't good enough. A third monograph working group meeting on benzene. IARC was complicit in producing a document without justifiable scientific reason for the sole purpose of having it serve as evidence in U.S. lawsuits where it would otherwise be too difficult for tort lawyers to win cases worth hundreds of millions of dollars in fees. So in showing how the IARC monograph process is easily abused, this series serves as a backstory to the glyphosate affair, where parallels with U.S. tort law firms can also be seen. We will see how the IARC monograph selection process was also manipulated with the last-minute addition of glyphosate, which is an herbicide, to a meeting originally planned to discuss the hazards of insecticides. 18,400 lawsuits against Bayer claiming a suspected link between glyphosate exposure and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. That's NHL. He's going to use that NHL. That's not National Hockey League. That's non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Relies solely on that IARC monograph. That the IARC process had been corrupted by these same American tort law firms and their litigation consultants should not be overlooked or underestimated. Alright, so he talks a bit about benzene. The real takeaway here is that if you have direct occupational exposure to larger levels of benzene, you might have something to worry about. But just the normal, everyday risk of the benzene levels that most of us have to worry about, and he says the public is not at all at risk from low-level contacts with benzene, and compared to other daily exposures to common carcinogens, such fear-mongering about benzene is ridiculous. And he also says, while it is nonsense to think the public should be concerned, there are, however, a group of scientists, mostly statisticians and epidemiologists, who believe that any benzene exposure level, no matter how small, will cause cancer. We've talked about this before with toxicity. I'll say it again with carcinogens. There is no such thing as a carcinogenic substance, only a carcinogenic dosage. The dose makes the poison. If you take nothing else from this video, remember that. The dose makes the poison. So really beware of all the people who say, oh, there's no safe level of this. It's all even the tiniest amount. No. That's ridiculous. That's always been ridiculous, and it always will be ridiculous. They have made a profitable career out of lending their credibility to tort law firms seeking lucrative fees from lawsuits against benzene producers and users. I like how he says this next part, note to journalists. It's like, hey, idiots, pay attention. Because you people are ignorant and you don't know this. IARC monographs are hazard assessments. A hazard assessment does not consider exposure levels. This explains why all other risk assessment agencies, and I mean all, like all of them, like we talked about with aspartame, we talked about JECFA. And I was like, no, we did a proper risk exposure, and no, this is not harmful. Well, IARC doesn't do that. This explains why all other risk assessment agencies have declared glyphosate to not be carcinogenic. This also makes IARC documents ideal for U.S. tort lawsuits where the level of scientific literacy on a jury is quite low. If you remember, when I went after the Young Turks for this, I should probably make a playlist of the IARC stuff for what they've done. By the way, one thing about IARC I wanted to mention. With the aspartame stuff going around, a lot of people are saying it's a myth that IARC is part of the WHO. They're completely independent. That's a lie. They do have their own governing structure separate from the WHO, but they are a part of the WHO. And they operate under its auspices. So let's not have any more of that. But anyway, with the Young Turks, they were talking about this with glyphosate. And Cenk was going on about, well, the way we decide these things is we have lawsuits and juries figure it out. No, that's not how we decide things in science. That's a bad way to decide things. That's a bad way to do it. Because juries are not scientifically literate. You get a scientifically literate person as a prospective juror in voir dire, guess what? Out of there. Out of there. Gone. No. The only thing we want this jury to know is what our ambulance chasers say. That's the only thing they get to know. That's how they think. That's how they think about these. They don't want them to be scientifically literate. All right, they produced 3 monographs declaring benzene a Group 1 carcinogen. 3. This might seem like an excessive use of agency resources unless one considers the benefit IARC serves to U.S. toxic tort litigators. Like many IARC monographs, the benzene ones have been beneficial as evidence for these tort lawsuits. The second one, however, failed to sufficiently link the substance to NHL, as the tort law firms were lining up large numbers of NHL victims that could be linked to benzene exposure, because we all can. It's a part of our environment. Who hasn't at one time inhaled fumes from products containing benzene? Doesn't like nail polish remover have benzene, and some others like paint thinner? A link had to be determined. Solution: IARC needed to go back and produce a further benzene monograph for the pleasure of the American tort lawyers that clearly linked benzene to NHL. Let me do a quick edit here. Okay, I'm back. Mucus is so much fun, isn't it? Okay. All right, here he goes, dropping names. Bernard Goldstein, Peter Infante, yeah, I'm guessing on that one, and Martin T. Smith, I'm pretty sure I got that one right, had all been acting as litigation consultants on benzene tort lawsuits for more than a decade. Dang, they make $500 an hour on this. Netting them anywhere between $25,000 and $200,000 prior to appeals. Dang. I swear, the money I could make if I were dishonest. You get paid a lot better than I do doing this stuff. All three of them were involved in the 2009 IARC Working Group panel on benzene. All of them have complained about the quality of IARC's work on this monograph. Infante published a paper in 2010 demanding that IARC reconduct their 2009 benzene monograph. Strafe and others from IARC replied that they had confidence in the quality of the work. They're not going to do it. They're not going to reconsider it. A more comprehensive IARC benzene monograph clearly linking it to NHL would translate into better lawsuit payouts. The law firms left the task of generating this evidence link to their litigation consultants. But a number of plaintiffs were being lined up for lawsuits. IARC needed to give them a document they could use in the courts. This section is based on recent FOIA documents that revealed some of the IARC actors' conversations on the third benzene monograph decision. Goldstein and Infante were tasked with pressuring Kurt Strafe to convene a third IARC panel on benzene, showing how this was essential as, without the totality of evidence linking benzene to NHL, it would be harder for plaintiffs to successfully sue industry. Yeah, they needed this. Otherwise, they had nothing. Right, Goldstein put it on the table. IARC needs to produce a further monograph directly linking NHL to benzene. You know, this is starting with the conclusion. That's exactly what you're not supposed to do in science. But what's happening here is not, hey, let's see if benzene causes non-Hodgkin lymphoma. No. We need it to cause NHL, so produce something that says it does. Otherwise, the law firms he works for will not be able to easily win cases. And let's face it, people, but when they get that big class action suit together and they say, hey, we're doing this for the victims get pocket change. It's the lawyers that make out like bandits from it. The patients generally get jacked, so. Strafe has been clearly informed of the reason why he should hold a further monograph on benzene to successfully sue the industry. This is quite a revelation from an experienced scientist who once worked as a director in Reagan's White House. If scientists wanted to show a link between a chemical and a cancer, normally they would conduct a study, produce evidence, publish it in a peer-reviewed journal. Goldstein seems to have felt, however, that it is easier and far more efficient to just get IARC to declare it in a hazard assessment-based monograph. He understands that most juries would not know the difference between actual scientific evidence and a hazard assessment concocted for the courts. Even more troubling is how Goldstein seems to feel that the role of IARC is to produce documents for the purpose of having endless litigation in order to put industry in a preventative mode. And the sad thing is, he's probably right about that. Right, it is clear how the sole motivation for a further IARC benzene monograph was to help the tort law firms sue industry on a greater scale. This message was sent to Strafe in the tone of calling in a favor. Strafe's initial response was science-based, that the evidence to associate benzene with NHL was less clear. When an IARC official has to remind a scientist that they only do hazard assessments and that the main meta-analysis did not find any evidence to clearly link NHL to benzene, then it's pretty safe to say there's no scientific support for a further monograph. And he talks about the costs of it. There's all sorts of UN scale director salaries and all of this sort of stuff, all things doing things for each other, and talks about how Goldstein just wouldn't take no for an answer. Let's get down to the year before. Strafe clearly stated IARC had no intention to produce a further monograph on benzene. IARC even refuted all of the criticisms, defending their benzene monograph in an official release. Strafe was having none of this. He knew the only purpose of an IARC benzene NHL monograph was to provide U.S. tort law firms with courtroom evidence. And besides, even if Kurt wanted to help his fellow colleagues make a few bob, he couldn't. The head of the monograph program had to respect proper internal IARC procedure. The 2014 IARC Priorities Report did not recommend a further benzene monograph in its priorities for the coming 5 years. Case closed. Given how much Strafe has said in public about how much better IARC is than other authorities, in that they have rules and processes, it would be highly embarrassing for Kurt if he then flouted these rules to help out some friends in profiting from a potential litigation honeypot. And so Strafe needed some persuasion. Goldstein and Infante prepared a poster on the links between NHL and benzene that they presented in front of 2,000 scientists at the 50th anniversary conference in 2016. Strafe was given a heads up. They were coming to Lyon to lobby hard for a further benzene monograph. Procedures can always change when opportunities are lucrative. No scientific civil servant with any integrity would let himself be pushed around by self-serving litigation consultants hunting for lucrative payouts. Oh, you sweet summer child. Oh, sorry to break it to you, but they do this all the time. Yeah, that's what he says. Or maybe not. Maybe Kirk could be persuaded in person at the IARC 50th anniversary conference. So, what did Strafe decide? Well, something must have happened at that conference. Kurt kept saying no until he said yes. November 2016, they announced yet another week-long monograph working group on the carcinogenicity of benzene. Ka-ching! Strafe relented to the pressure from the litigation consultants and, acting outside of normal agency protocol, rushed through a third monograph on benzene with no point or purpose but to help his friends identify more lucrative lawsuit opportunities to lend their expertise. This is a clear benefit for American scientists within the IARC network who have been padding their pensions with legal services averaging $500 an hour. Oh my God. What I do in these videos has to be worth than what these consultants do for the ambulance chasers. Yeah. Oh God. If you agree, please go to donate.bogosity.tv. Just help even things out a little bit. You want to know why the BS is getting around everywhere. You want to know why it's so big and such a problem. It's because there's big money in it. Well, there needs to be big money and rationality too. That's the only way this is going to turn around. The third benzene monograph was published in December. It drew the connections to NHL needed for the tort law firms to take their cases to court. With a weak hazard assessment declaration from IARC, these law firms now have the means to extract hundreds of millions of dollars in legal fees, which they will share with their litigation consultants. Mission accomplished. So the process for IARC's Monograph program is to provide studies based on the recommendations of the External Advisory Panel. There was no recommendation in 2015 for yet another monograph on benzene. And he contacted Kurt Strafe in autumn 2018 to get his response. He passed my messages over in silence. I suspect I am like Voldemort, he whose name cannot be spoken, to these ridiculously impervious and unaccountable civil servants. Strafe knew what was going on with the tort bonanza and was party to it. The utter hypocrisy here is outrageous. Worse, at the time of this change of heart, June 2016, Kurt Strafe did not believe there was scientific evidence to support the association of NHL with benzene. But this, like most things going on in IARC today, was never about the science. Worse yet, while commenting on glyphosate, Strafe used his position as head of the IARC Monograph program to further attack agencies like EFSA and the BFR, who are conducting proper risk assessments, suggesting even how it was worrying how these other agencies were influenced by companies like Monsanto. No, it's them. They're the problem. All along while Kurt knowingly fed the multi-trillion-dollar American tort industry beast with opportunity and bad science. And it's just like we're seeing with aspartame right now. Oh, it must be, Jack Foe who's in bed with the sweetener industry. Yep, that's the Goebbels thing. Accuse your enemy of doing what you are. They're ticking off all the propaganda boxes, people. Because that's what this is. This is propaganda so they can sue deep pockets. Strafe retired just after the benzene monograph was published, but he still works inside IARC as a consultant. Man, how do I get a consulting gig? I can consult on all sorts of gigs. I'll take $500 an hour. Just let me know. Yeah, and this is not isolated. This is not... No, I mean, I'll link to the whole thing and you can read through it, or just go through my channel looking for... I'll probably make the IARC playlist so you can see this. That's what they're all about. They're all about enabling it so dishonest lawyers can sue deep pockets. And dishonest scientists, violating everything science is supposed to be about, are going to rake in huge consulting fees by misleading juries and getting completely inappropriate, big dollar decisions made against all these companies whose only alternative is then to turn around and charge us more money. Make no mistake, you and I are the ones paying for this. So, thank you so very much for watching. Comments for the comment god, shares for the share throne. Please hit like, subscribe, and the bell. Get this above the shadow banning, because you know it's going to be shadow banned. I kind of wonder, because we're seeing, like with the Twitter files and everything else, how many governmental agencies are really involved behind the scenes in that. I kind of wonder how many tort lawyers are too. Because if they're in bed at IARC, maybe there were a few of them influencing YouTube too. And that, I posted a couple of these where normally with a video, you get, views over time. Is this curve going up like that? Just the curve you'd expect. You get most of your views right off the bat, and then it trickles off. It's continuing to go up and up, but just at a trickle. Well, you can see it sometimes, the exact moment the shadow banning kicks in, because it goes up and then it flattens out. And there was one I had a few weeks ago that really shot up almost like a straight line. And if it had followed its curve, then it was probably getting up to around 4,000 or 5,000 views. But right after that, like within a couple of hours, just flattened out. Right at the top, only made like 500 or 600 views. The shadow banning is real. It's happening. I've shown it so many different ways. And this information is so important. So please share this video, share this article, share this series, and just get the word out. That's the best thing you can do. And it also helps, we're wrestling against consultants that get $500 an hour fees. How long have I been yammering here for? 28 minutes. Some of that might be edited out because I had to blow my nose and some other things, but still, that'd be $250 worth of consulting. I'm not going to make $250 from this video, but if you want to kind of help it along and make it at least somewhat in the ballpark, an order of magnitude would be nice, then please go to donate.pagosity.tv. All sorts of ways to give. I have a Venmo link now. I don't think I've told you about that. I had PayPal. A lot of people are not liking what PayPal's been doing. That's fine. I understand. So there's Venmo there as well. And of course, the cryptocurrencies. I'm just trying to give you as many options as you can, including for becoming a regular supporter at Patreon or Subscribestar. So you can get these videos early and ad-free. You don't have to sit through the ads. Oh God, I am sorry, people. It's not my fault. I shouldn't apologize, but what YouTube has been doing with a lot of these mid-roll ads, they let us put in, hey, put an ad here, put an ad here. They might follow that. You can tell it not to put in any mid-rolls and it'll put in mid-rolls. You can tell it to put in a mid-roll every, 7 minutes and it'll put one in every 3. So, the good news is we are getting money from that, but I know it's annoying. And I know it's just going to encourage more people to just put in ad blockers. And if that's you, I understand. I'm not mad. But please come to donate.pagosity.tv and make it right. Even if it's just a few pennies in crypto. That helps more than you know. So, and also becoming a regular supporter at Patreon and Subscribestar. Get the videos early and ad-free, which was what set me off on that tangent. Sorry about that. I'm rambling. I'm wrapping it up now. There's all sorts of other benefits. Just check the right side of the page. You'll see them and make sure you're getting the ones you want. Thank you so very much. Until next time, stay strong and be free.